my girlfriend said. Tell me one special quality of yours so I can decide whether to marry you. I replied, you tell me one special quality of yours as well. After saying that, I left. That evening, she showed up at my door with her mother, both of them in tears. And she was holding a report in her hand. I'm a 29-year-old structural engineer working for a mid-sized firm in Denver. Nothing fancy, but the pay is solid and the work keeps me busy. I've always been the quiet type, the guy who prefers solving problems on a blueprint rather than navigating the chaos of relationships. My days are filled with load calculations, stress analyses, and making sure buildings don't collapse. It's methodical work that suits my personality. But 3 years ago, I met Andrea at a mutual friend's barbecue, and something clicked. She was a marketing coordinator at a tech startup, bubbly and outgoing where I was reserved. We balanced each other out, or so I thought. Andrea had this way of making everything feel lighter. She'd show up at my apartment after work with takeout from whatever new restaurant she'd discovered. We'd watch terrible reality TV shows that I'd never admit to enjoying, and for the first time in years, I felt like I had someone who genuinely cared. Her family seemed nice enough. Her mom, Patricia, was a retired high school English teacher who always asked detailed questions about my work and actually listened to the answers. Her younger brother Kevin was in his senior year at CU Boulder studying finance, and he seemed like a typical college kid, a bit immature but harmless. Everything felt normal, comfortable, safe. But about 6 months ago, things started shifting. Andrea became obsessed with marriage. Not in the sweet, future-planning way where you daydream about venues and guest lists, but in this almost transactional manner that made my stomach turn. She'd bring it up during dinner, while we were grocery shopping, even once while we were at a movie during the previews. When are you going to propose? My cousin just got engaged, and she's 2 years younger than me. I need to know where this is going. All my friends are getting married. It was relentless. I wasn't against marriage. Hell, I'd thought about it plenty. I could see a future with Andrea. But I wanted it to happen naturally, organically, not because of some invisible timeline she'd constructed in her head based on what everyone else was doing. Every conversation felt like a negotiation, and I started feeling less like a partner and more like a checklist item she needed to cross off before turning 30. Then came last Tuesday. We were at her apartment, a one-bedroom in Capitol Hill that she decorated with more throw pillows than any human could possibly need. She was scrolling through Instagram, sighing dramatically every few seconds like she was personally wounded by other people's engagement photos. I was on the couch trying to read a structural assessment report for work when she suddenly turned to me. I need to ask you something serious, she said, her voice sharp and businesslike. I put down my tablet and looked at her. Okay, tell me one special quality of yours so I can decide whether to marry you. I just stared at her. The way she said it, so clinical, so detached, it felt like she was interviewing me for a position I didn't even apply for. Like I was sitting across from her in some corporate conference room being asked why she should hire me. My first instinct was to laugh because surely she was joking, but the look on her face told me she was dead serious. Her eyes were cold, evaluating. Is that really how you want to do this? I asked quietly, keeping my voice level. I'm just being practical, she said, crossing her arms defensively. I need to know what makes you different. What makes you worth committing to? I can't just throw away my life on someone who doesn't bring something special to the table. Something inside me snapped. Not in an angry, explosive way, but in a clear, cold way where suddenly everything became crystalline and obvious. I stood up slowly, grabbed my jacket from the back of her chair, and looked her straight in the eye. You tell me one special quality of yours as well, I said, my voice steady. Then I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't raise my voice. I just left. Update 1. I drove home in complete silence. No music. No podcasts. No phone calls. Just the sound of my own breathing and the hum of the engine as I navigated through evening traffic. When I got back to my apartment, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall for what felt like hours. My phone buzzed repeatedly. Texts from Andrea, all variations of "Where did you go?" and "Why are you being like this?" and "This is so immature." I didn't respond to any of them. I ordered Chinese food, ate it mechanically while watching nothing in particular on Netflix, and went to bed early. But I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation, analyzing it from every angle like it was a structural problem I needed to solve. Was I overreacting? Should I have just answered her question? But every time I tried to rationalize staying, I remembered the look in her eyes, like I was a car she was considering purchasing and needed to know the specs before making an offer. By Wednesday morning, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to be with someone who treated love like a business deal. I drafted a text breaking things off, carefully choosing my words to be clear but not cruel. But before I could send it, my phone rang. It was Patricia, Andrea's mom. "Sweetheart, can we talk?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly in a way I'd never heard before. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the red decline button. "Patricia, if this is about Andrea, I think we need some space." "Please," she interrupted, and I could hear genuine desperation in her voice. "Just give me 5 minutes. It's important. More important than you know." Something in her tone made me agree. Patricia had always been kind to me, had treated me like family. I owed her at least a conversation. "All right, 5 minutes. Can you come to Andrea's apartment tonight? Around 7. I didn't want to. Everything in me screamed to stay away, to send that text and move on with my life. But I also didn't want to be the kind of person who refused to have a difficult conversation face to face. "Fine. I'll be there." "Thank you," she said, and I heard her voice crack. "Thank you so much." The rest of the day dragged like walking through concrete. Work felt meaningless. I sat in a meeting about foundation requirements for a new office building, and all I could think about was that conversation. My colleague Sarah asked if I was okay during lunch, and I gave her some generic excuse about not sleeping well. I kept replaying the conversation from Tuesday, trying to figure out if I'd overreacted. Maybe I should have just answered her question. Maybe I was being too sensitive, too proud. But every time I tried to convince myself of that, I remembered the way she looked at me, like I was a product she was considering buying, complete with a mental pros and cons list. When 7 o'clock came, I drove to Andrea's apartment with a knot in my stomach that felt like it was tightening with every mile. I parked on the street, sat in my car for a full 5 minutes trying to prepare myself for whatever was coming, then finally forced myself to walk to her door. I knocked, and Patricia opened it immediately, like she'd been standing there waiting. Her eyes were red and puffy, like she'd been crying for hours. The skin around them was swollen, and she wasn't wearing any makeup, which was unusual for her. Behind her, I saw Andrea sitting on the couch, also in tears, clutching something in her hands. "Come in," Patricia said softly, stepping aside. I stepped inside, confused and now genuinely worried. The apartment was dim, only one lamp on in the corner, and it felt heavy, like the air itself was weighted down with something terrible. "What's going on?" Andrea stood up slowly, her hands shaking visibly. She was holding a folder, one of those medical report folders you get from a doctor's office, the manila kind with a metal clasp. She walked toward me like she was afraid I'd bolt, each step careful and measured. "I need to show you something," she whispered, her voice barely audible. She handed me the folder with trembling hands. I opened it carefully, my eyes scanning the document inside. It was a lab report dated from 3 weeks ago. At the top, in bold letters, it said, "Genetic screening results. BRCA1 gene mutation detected." Below that were columns of medical terminology I only partially understood, but certain phrases jumped out. "Significantly elevated risk. Prophylactic measures recommended. Genetic counseling advised." I looked up at her, not understanding what this meant, my brain struggling to connect the dots. "I have the BRCA1 mutation," she said, her voice breaking completely. "It means I have an 80% chance of developing breast cancer in my lifetime and a 40% chance of ovarian cancer. My grandmother died from breast cancer when I was 10. My aunt is in remission right now after a double mastectomy and 8 rounds of chemo." My mouth went dry. I felt like someone had punched all the air out of my lungs. I didn't know what to say. What do you say to something like that? "I found out 3 weeks ago," she continued, tears streaming down her face. "And I've been terrified every single day since. Terrified of telling you. Terrified that you'd leave me. Terrified that no one would want to marry me if they knew. Terrified that I'm basically a ticking time bomb." Patricia stepped forward, tears streaming down her face as well. "She's been a complete mess, sweetheart." She didn't mean to sound cold the other night. She was trying to protect herself. She thought if she made it sound practical and businesslike, it would hurt less when you left. She was building walls before you could. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest, all the anger and frustration from the past 2 days evaporating instantly. "Andrea, I know I handled it wrong," she said, sobbing now, her whole body shaking. I know I sounded awful. Cold. Mean. But I was so scared. I thought if I told you, you'd see me as broken. As someone with an expiration date. As damaged goods. I needed to know you'd stay for me. For who I actually am. Not out of pity or obligation or some misguided sense of heroism. I set the folder down on her coffee table and pulled her into a hug without thinking. She collapsed against me, and I held her while she cried. Her body was trembling, and I could feel her tears soaking through my shirt. Patricia put a hand on my shoulder, squeezing gently, and the three of us just stood there in that tiny apartment, the weight of everything pressing down on us like we were at the bottom of the ocean. Update 2. We spent the next few hours talking. Andrea explained everything. The doctor's appointments she'd been going to alone, the genetic counselor who'd walked her through the statistics and options, the sleepless nights spent Googling survival rates and surgical procedures. She could do preventative surgeries, a double mastectomy, removal of her ovaries, and fallopian tubes. She could do aggressive screenings every 6 months. Or she could just wait and monitor and hope she was in the lucky 20% who never developed cancer. None of the options were easy. None of them were fair. All of them involved losing something. I'm so angry, she admitted, wiping her eyes with a tissue that was already soaked through. I'm angry at my body. I'm angry at my genetics. I'm angry at the universe. I'm angry that I have to make these decisions at 27 years old when I should be thinking about my career and traveling and normal things. And I took it out on you, and I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve that. You should have told me, I said gently, brushing her hair back from her face. I would have been there for you. For all of it. I know, she whispered, fresh tears falling. But I was afraid you'd look at me differently. Like I'm damaged. Like I'm not worth the trouble. Like I'm a burden you'd eventually resent. You're not damaged, I said firmly, tilting her chin up so she had to look at me. You're dealing with something terrifying, something that would break most people, and you're still here. You're still fighting. That takes more strength than I can even comprehend. Patricia excused herself to the kitchen to make tea, leaving us alone on the couch. Andrea leaned her head on my shoulder, exhausted from crying, her breathing finally starting to even out. What do we do now? She asked quietly, her voice hoarse. We figure it out together, I said. But you have to promise me something. What? No more tests. No more walls. No more pushing me away because you're scared of what I might do. If we're going to do this, we do it honestly. All cards on the table. She nodded against my shoulder. I promise. I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to prove something to me. You've already proven everything. Over the next few weeks, things slowly started to feel normal again, or at least a new version of normal. Andrea scheduled consultations with specialists, oncologists, breast surgeons, plastic surgeons, and I went with her to every single one. We met with doctors who showed us charts and statistics and surgical diagrams. We talked to a genetic counselor who explained inheritance patterns and what this might mean for future children. The information was overwhelming, like trying to drink from a fire hose, but we took it one appointment at a time, one decision at a time. Her friends rallied around her. Her best friend Lily came over almost every night with dinner. Her coworkers sent care packages. Patricia was at the apartment constantly, bringing groceries and cleaning and trying to mother Andrea back to emotional stability. But I noticed something strange. Her brother Kevin started acting weird around me. He'd avoid eye contact, give short one-word answers when I tried to make conversation, and leave the room whenever I entered. At first, I figured he was just stressed about Andrea's diagnosis. It had to be hard on him too, watching his sister deal with this. So I didn't push it. I gave him space. But then, about a month after the revelation, on a Wednesday afternoon while I was reviewing beam specifications at work, I got a call from an unknown number with a local area code. Is this Andrea's boyfriend? A woman's voice asked when I answered. Yeah, who's this? My name is Brooke. I'm Kevin's girlfriend. We need to talk. It's urgent. The way she said it made my blood run cold. About what? Not over the phone, she said quickly. Can you meet me tomorrow? There's a coffee shop near campus. The roastery? Please. It's about Kevin and it affects Andrea. Update 3. I met Brooke at the roastery the next day during my lunch break. She was a petite brunette with nervous energy, fidgeting with her coffee cup and glancing around like she expected Kevin to burst through the door at any moment. She had dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept in days. Thanks for meeting me, she said as I sat down across from her. I know this is weird, and we've never met, but I didn't know who else to talk to. I can't go to Patricia, and Andrea has enough on her plate. What's going on? I asked, keeping my voice calm even though my heart was racing. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. It's about Kevin. And money. A lot of money. My stomach dropped. What about them? Kevin's been acting strange ever since Andrea got her test results. He's been secretive, making phone calls late at night and whispering, hiding his laptop, changing passwords. At first, I thought he was cheating on me, so I did something I'm not proud of. I went through his phone when he was in the shower. She pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot of a bank transfer. It was from Kevin's checking account to an account I didn't recognize, just a long string of numbers. The amount, $15,000. The date was 2 weeks ago. What is this? I asked, zooming in on the image. I don't know, Brooke said, her voice shaking. But there are more. So many more. She swiped through her phone, showing me screenshot after screenshot. Transfers of $8,000, $12,000, $5,000, another $15,000. Different dates, all within the past month. He's transferred over $40,000 in the last 3 weeks. His account is nearly empty, and he's been getting these weird texts from numbers he won't explain. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Does Andrea know? Does Patricia? I don't think so. And I'm scared to tell them because Andrea is already dealing with so much, and Patricia, I don't know how she'd handle it. But I thought you should know. Something is really wrong, and I think Kevin might be in trouble. Real trouble. I thanked Brooke for telling me, paid for both our coffees, and left feeling sick to my stomach. That night, I couldn't focus on anything. I tried to work on a project proposal, but the words blurred together. I tried to watch TV, but I couldn't follow the plot. Finally, around 9 p.m., I texted Kevin. We need to talk. Tomorrow. Don't make me come find you. He responded immediately. About what? You know what. The next evening, I showed up at Andrea's apartment unannounced. Kevin was there, sitting at the kitchen counter scrolling through his phone. When he saw me, his face went pale. We need to talk, I said, my voice cold and hard in a way I'd never used before. Outside. Now. He followed me to the parking lot, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his eyes darting around like a cornered animal. Where's the money going? I asked bluntly, not bothering with small talk. His eyes widened, genuine fear crossing his face. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb with me, Kevin. $40,000. Where is it? He looked like he might throw up right there in the parking lot. His face had gone from pale to green. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. Right now? Because whatever story you've got, you're going to tell Andrea and Patricia tonight, or I will. He ran a hand through his hair, panicking, his breathing becoming rapid. I got into debt. Gambling. Online poker. It started as just small bets, fun stuff with friends, but then I found these offshore sites. I thought I could win it back. I thought I was good at it. But I kept losing. More and more. And these people, the ones running the sites, they're not like regular casinos. They've been threatening me. Sending messages. Pictures of my apartment. Pictures of Patricia's house. I felt a wave of disgust wash over me. So you've been stealing from your family? While your sister is dealing with potentially terminal cancer. Not stealing, he said quickly, desperately. I took out a loan against Mom's house. She co-signed for my student loans, so I had access to the equity line. I'm going to pay it back, I swear. I just need time. I'm working on it. Does Patricia know? He shook his head, tears forming in his eyes. Please don't tell her. Please. She'll lose the house if she finds out. It's the only thing she has. Dad left her that house. She's lived there for 30 years. I stared at him, my fists clenched so tight my knuckles were white. Part of me wanted to punch him. Part of me wanted to tell him to fix it himself. But I thought about Patricia, kind, generous Patricia who'd welcome me into her family, potentially losing her home. You're going to tell her yourself. Tonight. Both of them. Or I walk in there right now and do it for you. His face crumpled. Can't we just? Tonight, I said firmly. And then we're going to figure out how to fix this. But the lying stops now. Final update. Kevin confessed everything to Patricia and Andrea that night in Andrea's living room. I was there, sitting next to Andrea on the couch, holding her hand while her world fell apart for the second time in a month. The fallout was brutal. Patricia was devastated, not just about the money, but about the lies, the betrayal, the fact that her son had put her home at risk while his sister was fighting for her future. She didn't yell. She just sat there crying silently, which somehow felt worse. Andrea didn't speak for 3 days afterward. Not to Kevin. Not to Patricia. Barely to me. She went through the motions, went to work, came home, ate dinner, but it was like a light had gone out inside her. I helped Patricia find a financial advisor through someone at my firm. We spent hours going over documents, restructuring the loan before it became a foreclosure situation. Patricia had to refinance her entire mortgage, essentially starting over at 62 years old. The payments would be tight, but manageable if she was careful. Kevin moved out of his apartment and moved back in with Patricia to save money. He started attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings 3 times a week. He got a second job bartending on weekends. He opened up his finances completely, gave Patricia access to all his accounts, all his passwords. He's working his ass off to pay back what he owes, and from what I hear, he's actually following through. But the trust? That'll take years to rebuild, if it ever does. As for Andrea and me, we're still together. We're stronger than we were before, actually. She decided to go through with a preventative double mastectomy scheduled for early next year. It's a huge decision, one that took weeks of consultations and soul-searching and crying in my arms at 3 in the morning. But she's at peace with it. She says she'd rather make the choice on her terms than wait for cancer to make it for her. I'll be there every step of the way, through the surgery, through the recovery, through whatever comes next. We haven't talked about marriage since that night. We don't need to. We're building something stronger than a ring or a ceremony or a wedding registry at Target. We're building trust. We're building partnership. We're building a life where we show up for each other even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my apartment on a Saturday morning, reflecting on everything while Andrea sleeps in after a night shift at a marketing conference. Patricia texted me earlier to say thank you for helping with the financial mess, which still feels surreal. Kevin sent me a long apology text last week that I haven't responded to yet. I'm not sure I'm ready to forgive him, but I'm also not carrying around anger about it anymore. Life didn't turn out the way I expected. 6 months ago, I thought I was walking away from a relationship that had run its course. Instead, I'm more committed than I've ever been to anything in my life. I learned that Andrea's special quality, the one she couldn't articulate that night, is resilience. And maybe mine is just showing up, even when things get messy and complicated and scary. Edit 1. Some people have asked why I stayed with Andrea after everything with Kevin. Honestly, it wasn't even a question in my mind. Kevin's mess wasn't her fault, and she needed someone stable in her life. Someone who wasn't going to abandon her when things got difficult. I wasn't going to be another thing she lost. Edit 2. For those wondering, yes, I did propose. Just last week, actually. Nothing fancy, just the two of us on a hike at Red Rocks, overlooking the valley. No grand speech. Just me telling her I wanted to build a life with her, whatever that life looked like. She said yes before I even finished talking. The ring can wait until after the surgery. Edit 3. Patricia's house is safe. Kevin's making regular payments. Andrea starts physical therapy consultations next month to prepare for surgery. And me? I'm exactly where I want to be.